Welcome to Man vs. Meeple, the show where we talk about all things board game related. Today, Jeremy and I are over here because we've got someone else over here. Again, Travis Chance of Kolossal Games, that's Kolossal Games with a K.
Yeah.
Here to talk to us about the first big step out there with Kolossal, right? Western Legends.
This is the first game in our 2018 rollout. This is Western Legends. Super excited about it.
And this is, first and foremost, a sandbox game, right?
Yes, it's a sandbox game, or I guess you could say open world game.
Open world.
And for those who are not familiar with that, what that means is that you will have a character, you will portray a character, and in the context of the game, you'll have a lot of different options. So you're able to interact with the world in a lot of different ways, whereas in some other games, it's a little more confined to mechanisms.
Yeah, there's usually routes, whereas this one, you can go play poker, you can go do this, there's all sorts of things to do. Kind of like, and you've probably heard this, kind of like a Red Dead Redemption-ish board game, right?
Yes,
that's a good thing.
The designer Hervé, that was a big inspiration for him.
Cool.
Was actually that game.
We've had the chance to play it, and we love the game.
Yeah.
And what's unique about it is that each of the characters, each of the players at the table is going to represent possibly someone who's good and someone who is bad, and that's represented by being wanted or being a marshal. Talk about that component, because that's a huge draw within this game.
And you don't have to be either, right?
You don't have to be either. You can
neutral.
change. You're not locked into one path at all. So the marshal track is what I call Eurogame 101. It's just you're on a track. They're both tracks, and they're both 9-space tracks. And at a glance, you're like, oh, this doesn't. Am I just on one track and it's the same thing, but I just choose one or the other? The marshal track is the kind of slow and steady. As you move up, you earn money, and then every third space you get LP, which is the game's victory points. So legendary points. Yeah. And at the end of the game, you'll score points equal to where you are, which row you're on. The thing about being a marshal is there's no way anyone can take your marshal points from you. But marshal points are totally dependent on a few things in the game. One of them is bandits. So if you beat a bandit, you can gain marshal points.
Bandits being just NPC characters.
They're NPCs. They sit there. As soon as you enter their space, they attack you, and you are trying to you want to beat them. The bandits, all the NPCs in the game use this little deck called the fight deck, and essentially what it is the game uses like a poker deck.
Yeah.
And all the cards have the poker values and suits on them, but they also have abilities, bonuses, reactions, things like that. And the fight deck, what's interesting is that no matter what happens, it's just 2 through ace. It's like there's no suits. But no matter what happens, the ability is going to trigger on there. The lower value cards are the ones that are punishing, and the higher value cards actually give rewards to the player. So if they lose, then they're going to get some sort of a consolation. And usually when you fight a bandit, you're going to get wounded unless you have the right cards and stuff to avoid that. The other thing you can do is you can arrest wanted players. So the opportunity for the marshal players is a little bit less, right? It's kind of thematic in that you're keeping the peace, Ideally,
doing lawful things.
Yes, yeah. And then as you move up, like I said, you get money, you get more points. The wanted track, totally different. The wanted track is at the end of your turn, you score legendary points equal to where you are on the track.
So it's more of an ongoing tap of points.
Correct, but you slap a big old target on your back, and now you have the sheriff, who's an NPC, who's going to pursue you, and the players have the story cards as a way to activate the sheriff, and then there's a poker card called Manhunt where players can activate the sheriff. And the sheriff's tough. He draws the most of these cards, and getting arrested. So getting arrested is can be brutal if you've not positioned yourself.
So you lose a lot when you get arrested, but you also, like you said with the marshal, you can't lose marshal points, but if you get arrested, you lose all your progress on the wanted track.
I've played about 150 games of this in the last 6 months, and I've only ever seen a person get to the end of this track one time. Like when we were playing, Jeremy got up to the middle of it and stayed there for quite some time, which was impressive. The thing that's interesting about the wanted track, some people will be like, well, that's not fair. Like they're gaining points every turn. It encourages that player interaction, right? They set the pace of the game. Because it's an open world game, you don't want to just have everyone running around going, well, let's just sit here and min-max as long as we can. Being wanted is a natural way for the game to kind of have a rhythm to it, and it sets the tempo for the players to interact and things like that.
So you said as a marshal, you're kind of keeping the peace. As a wanted player, what are you trying to do on the board? Like, what are your goals?
Unlawful things.
So what kind of things could you do as a wanted player?
So the wanted player is you can rob other players. So there's 3 different ways you can fight other players, all under the banner of fight. There's duels, which is just the classic high noon, and then there's rob, and if you rob someone, you take half their money or half their gold, round it up, and you get a wanted point. And one thing I didn't mention is the even numbered spaces on the wanted track, you actually draw poker cards.
Little bonuses.
Yeah, what you need because it's a more conflict heavy strategy in the game because people are coming after you. Another thing you can do is you can rob the bank. And so everything else in the game, you're going to get 1 marshal point or 1 wanted point relatively, which strategy you have. But the bank actually, if you fail at robbing the bank, you still get 1 wanted point. If you succeed, you get 3 wanted points.
Oh, wow.
But you have to fight the guard, who's an NPC. He's not represented with a miniature on the board, but he's the second toughest NPC. And again, you're probably going to get wounded. You're probably going to lose some cards. There's some risk there.
There's cattle wrestling too.
There's cattle wrestling, yeah, and wrangling. So the marshal players want to take. There's 2 ranches. They want to take the cows down here to the market at the rail station, which is a little bit. It's a longer path by one space. Yeah, and also once you're there, and then you got to go back. The wanted player can steal from one ranch and sell to the other, and then when they're at that ranch, if they want, they can just steal from that guy and go sell to the other guy. So there's in some ways the wanted player has there's more opportunities to score wanted points, but that comes with the
cost of being
wanted,
pursued.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's cool how it, like you said earlier, the wanted player is going to be running away with it to some degree, unless other players interact. So it really, a lot of games don't do a great job of teaching people, hey, you can't let him do this. The fact that your marshals and they're wanted kind of has a built-in idea of stop these guys.
When we played our game, Jeremy leapt out to like 10 LP or something very early because no one was stopping him. And so he was able to sit there and continue to accumulate those points. And then you guys were, I believe it was you that went after him.
Yeah, I finally went after him.
And arrested him. And he got right back and immediately became one. You can literally, and when you get arrested, you lose half your money, you lose half your gold, you lose all your wanted points, at which point you could jump over when you're not wanted. Once you're wanted, you can't become a marshal. When you're a marshal, you can choose to become wanted.
Interesting.
So speaking of money, money's a heavy portion of the game. What do you do with the money? I'm seeing a lot of different icons out here, and then there's a ton of different things that you can buy. Talk about all those different aspects and how they...
So the main impetus in the game is these little locations, these little icons. So with money, you can ante to go play poker, and there's literally a Texas Hold'em variant within the game that players can play. My favorite part being that there's anyone that's in the town limits, they can join the game by anteing in. Now, they can't get points because they didn't spend the action, but they can still get the pot. The house always antes up $50. And there's some action cards that allow you, like the 2, there's a card called Cheat, and you can play it as any value card. And there's the 10 is Lady Luck, which lets you can get money or draw a card. Another thing you can do is you can buy and upgrade items. So there's you can hold up to 3 non-weapon, non-mount items. You can have any amount of weapons, but you only have 1 active weapon. You can only ever own 1 mount. The weapons are going to give you, obviously, advantages in fighting. The mounts are going to help you move. So like you have a Mustang and you have a mule. The mule is better for the gold mining strategy. It lets you carry more gold, where the Mustang is like super, mobile, allows you to cruise around.
And all these cars can be upgraded too.
And you can upgrade them. Yeah, if you upgrade them, they get slightly better, and they give you victory points at the end of the game. So that also is a nice way to sink your money into score and get some value there. You can also go to the cabaret and revel, basically buy everybody drinks, throw a big party, celebrate your, legendary status.
Score points in the process.
And score points in the process. Yeah, for every $30 you spend there, you get 1 point. And that's like, you could spend you can hold $120. So you could get 4 LP right there. So one of the sub-strategies in the game is to mine, sell gold to the bank, which gives you legendary points and money, and then go over there if you can get through the bandit in the middle of the town, obviously.
So a variety of different characters too. You have some very marquee Western legends, so to speak, in this game, all with variable player powers and variable goals that they're trying to achieve as well. But you also have these, which are kind of objective cards that you're trying to fulfill through the course of the game as well.
So we started off with an event, like a really kind of standard event system, like everyone takes a turn,
Just
you
flip
flip
a
it over,
card.
and it felt mechanical.
Yeah.
And so we wanted something that was more organic, and where we settled was we wanted people to have the option to have personal objectives in a game where you have 17 or more options for every action on your turn.
Yeah.
Giving people a little direction is a good thing. So what these are is they're kind of an amalgam of event cards and public objectives. So for example here, end your turn at a location outside of a town. That sounds pretty easy, right? Well, You're going to be out here in the wilds. Most of the core ways you're going to get points are here in the town, so you're going to have to really plan your turn. And when you do that, what you do is you take one of these cubes and you put it on the card, and that denotes that you've contributed, you've met the conditions for that story to happen. Whenever the requisite number of cubes is on the card, then you reveal the card. It'll have some story to it, and some of those stories are actual historical elements from the time, different things like the Clanton Boys, the cowboy gang that's in Tombstone, or the Alvord Styles gang, etc. And then there's going to be a reward for the people who contributed to the story card, or a penalty for the people who did not. And the penalties are minor, but there's also, it spawns bandits, and then the person who triggered the card gets to move the sheriff. So there's a huge impetus for the wanted players to kind of zig and zag to be the one, in which you did that very successfully. You kept moving the sheriff away from you, which allowed you to score more points, which once again put pressure on the marshal players to come after you.
Yeah, what I really like about those is, like you said, they're like event cards, but done in the most interesting way. You're not just flipping it over. Because they're not really objectives that you're going to look at and think, oh, what do I have to do to achieve that? A lot of them you're just going to achieve maybe naturally, but like you said, the wanted player can take that into consideration if they want to control that sheriff a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that they're all things that you want to be doing anyway.
Right.
But it's when are you going to accomplish these things? Like, okay, well, this one here is gain 2 or more LP from a single action. Maybe I should go to the cabaret. Maybe I should go now and sell all my gold to try to get on here. And there's a little bit of competition because those bonuses do help accelerate you in the game. They give you, points. They give you marshal points, wanted points. There's a couple ways in here. The only way in the game where the wanted player can switch from a wanted player to a marshal. So they add a little bit of narrative to the game. They add a little bit of breadth of the world, I think, and the main thing is they add some direction in the game, in a game that has a lot of options.
Can you talk a little bit more about just combat in general? How is that handled?
So combat is, this is a pretty typical trope in Western games. Is there's a poker deck, and it's a poker deck and then some.
Yeah.
I think that this particular design, really, the poker cards shine in so much that combat is high card. It's really simple.
At its base.
Yeah.
It's just high card.
Yeah.
I'm going to attack you. I'm going to fight you. I put my card down. Do you want to fight back? You can choose to not fight back, because if you think you're going to lose, then you don't have to waste the card. And if you lose, you get a wound, and wounds reduce your hand size. You can have a maximum of 3, and at the end of the game, you'll lose a point for each wound you have. So wounds are...
But you can heal those back up.
You can. There's numerous ways to heal them.
Yeah.
They're an inconvenience. They're not like,
super punishing.
You can be at max wounds, and sometimes someone will be at max wounds and be like, I'm at max wounds.
I'm just going to ride it out.
I'm going to go crazy and go high risk strategy from here on out. So what happens is we reveal our cards, and then like I said, the NPCs use the fight deck, but the players use card to card combat.
Yeah, from their hand.
So there's things like bonuses. So for here, shootout. So let's just say you're Billy the Kid, I'm Annie Oakley, we fought. I reveal this fool's gold. This card just also counts as a gold nugget. It has no combat ability. But your card says, if this card is played in a fight, you may immediately cancel the results of that fight and initiate a new fight. So I beat you. So now you could play this 8 to try to lure out me playing an ace or a face card, and then you could come back in and go, well, I have a jack or something like that. Now I'm looking at my hand like, well, I wasn't expecting that to happen.
No.
So there's a bunch of little interesting...
And you can use your weapons as well and the ability of your card if it's been upgraded. So
yeah, the revolver has no inherent ability. If you upgrade it, it reduces the value of your opponent's cards. All the weapons, if you upgrade them, they reduce the value of your opponent's card played by 1. The rifle lets me look at 2 random cards. So that way I know.
From the opponent's hand.
Correct. And that includes the NPC. So against a bandit, I could go, oh, he's only got a 2 and a 3. Cool, I can win a fight with a 4 right now.
But it's really cool because, like you said, at first, at its base, it's just high card. But don't think for a second that it's just that. Because these abilities make this fighting, and basically turn them into multi-use cards, too. Because there's cards you can use in a fight, but then you're also going to be using them to play poker if you want to go play poker.
You want to keep them for the poker
So you
hand.
might want to keep them for the poker hand and not use them for the fight. So you're making that decision. So the decisions in the fighting and using the cards is really cool.
Yeah, the lower value cards are typically more utility style cards.
Right.
They're like super generally useful and you'll kind of blow through those. The face cards, the higher value cards, have that interesting tension of, I really want to use this to fight, but I also want to use this for its cool ability. And again, some of the cards encourage you to do things like fight bandits, and like, hey, like for example, the Jack is called Bulletproof, and what it does is if no matter what happens in the fight, you don't gain a wound, and you actually get to lose a wound. So you'll go in and go, you know what, a Jack's not the greatest, it's the worst face card, but I can fight, and the penalty of getting a wound is going to be mitigated. So it encourages you to take that risk, which I think is exciting and fun.
Yeah, and the combination of the cards you get in your hand, along with the kinds of items you can collect, you can kind of build up your character so that you can use a certain type of hand and really help. It allows you to define your strategy significantly.
There's a lot of incidental things, like, for example, the whiskey, which I think is really funny. When you buy the whiskey, you lose a wound, and then later, if you enter a space with another player, you can discard the whiskey to basically bust it over somebody's head and give them a wound. So the provisions, when you buy it, you draw a card, and the provisions are used for a lot of the goals, or you can use an action to draw another card and get rid of a wound. So there's a lot of multi-use in there. Then you have things like the Miner's Map and the 10-gallon hat. The Miner's Map helps you with prospecting, which is, the prospecting uses these dice right over here. And that's the only, what I would say is the random, like the high luck factor in the game is the prospecting. There's only one fail on those dice. But the Miner's Map lets you re-roll, gives you a re-roll. Because the mining strategy is a really strong one. The 10-gallon hat is for playing poker. It's the whole, I'm tipping my hat, you can't see my face, you can't read my expression when I'm playing cards. It gives you extra legendary points when you win. So it helps you if you want to play poker, if you want to do a poker-heavy strategy. And some of the characters like Wild Bill Hickok, for example, is predisposed. His ability is more geared toward the poker.
And that's one thing we didn't talk about too much yet, is all the different characters are variable player powers.
Totally different. Each character has an ability that unlocks at 5 LP. And then once you hit that, you have for the rest of the game. On the back of each card, everybody starts at a different location, and every single character has a unique starting setup. So Crazy Horse here starts with 3 poker cards and an upgraded revolver. So he's got a combat bonus out of the gate, and he's got a lot of cards in his hand, but he starts outside of a town. So it's a little harder for him. He's got to spend some time to get into town, or either position himself fighting out in the town. Billy the Kid is the most wanted character. So right out of the gate, he's wanted, but he gets to go first, and he's got a hand of poker cards, so he's always going to be the first player. He's got those starting cards. At the beginning of your turn, you're going to choose to take money or cards. You can either have $20 or 2 cards, or $10 and 1 card. So obviously,
you're getting at the start of every turn.
At the start of every turn, the turns are super fast, as you guys saw.
Yeah, it is very fast playing game.
It's this. You go $20, 2 poker cards, or 1 and 1, and you take 3 actions, and your turns are really quick.
I have 2 more questions for you. This one, we didn't get to play with the Man in Black. Talk about him, and then also, how does the game actually end?
So the Man in Black is a 2-player variant. This game is a 3 to 6 player game, originally is what it was. And we really wanted to have a solo and a 2-player version of the game, because I know a lot of people play with their spouses, roommates, whatever. So what we came up with was the Man in Black. And the Man in Black is simply just a card that represents a player in the game. It's AI, though, and a 10-card deck. After each player takes a turn, you reveal the top card of the Man in Black deck. He's going to move somewhere, and he's going to do something. So, for example, he might move to a bandit camp, And if there's a bandit there, he's going to get rid of him, and he's going to gain legendary points. And he's going to throw in an additional penalty, like you guys got to discard a card, or you guys got to lose money because you didn't properly manage the guy that was there. Or if you don't have a wound, you gain a wound. He even goes to the cabaret and initiates a game of poker. So you got to play him in poker.
Oh, interesting.
He moves around. He tries to fight other players. Always the player with the most LP. And if that player happens to be wanted, you're going to get arrested on top of it. Because the man in black is kind of, the idea is, it's that typical. This guy's not only is he
anti-hero.
He's an enigma.
He's kind of a good guy, kind of a bad guy. He's above the law type thing. Yeah. So it's amazing. We played through it 2 times yesterday when we were together, and it's really cool that 10 cards can accomplish all of that.
Facilitate a lot of the different actions that a normal player would do.
And he can actually win the game. So your other question is, how does the game end? And what you do at the beginning of the game is you choose 15, 20, or 25 LP, and that's going to determine your length of the game.
Like a target length?
Okay.
Correct. And the man in black can actually win the game.
Okay.
So what happens is when a player or the man in black crosses that, hits that amount or more, then you finish the current turn, and then everybody else, including the player triggered that, gets one more full turn. So everyone has an even amount of turns. So there is also a little bit of this interesting tension of like, well, I think Jeremy's beating me. I have 3 wounds, but I have 2 upgraded things. So if I can run over and get rid of my wounds, then trigger the game end, I think I got him.
Right.
Cool.
And the only other hidden point scoring, there's only one hidden point scoring thing, which is the goal tokens, which is these little poker chips and the little poker.
Tie into your personal goals.
The personal goals, yep.
Yeah.
For every goal you've completed, you draw 1. They're valued 1, 2, and 3. The distribution is weighted toward the median of 2. And you have those face down. If you complete your second goal, say you drew a 1 on your first one, and you drew 2 2s on your next one, you can pitch back the 1 you drew on your first one.
I like the fact that you can cycle out the ones you've already taken by taking more each time.
Yep. And so that's your in-game scoring. You're going to lose points for your wounds. Your money is, for every $60 you have, you're going to gain 1 LP. You're going to get points for your upgraded weapons and mounts. You don't get points for your gold that's left over because you're silly and you should have sold it. But it is a tiebreaker. Okay. And then you've got these, and you got your tracks. The most wanted player is going to score 3. So even the in-game scoring, it's like the marshal
for whatever row they're on.
Yeah. The most wanted player scores 3. Every other wanted player scores 1. If there's a tie for most wanted, then everyone scores 1. So there's even that. Like you want to be. So you'll often see in the end of the game that last player is like, well, I'm a marshal. Yeah. I'm only halfway up the track. Maybe I ought to go rob the bank and try and rob the bank and rob a player so that I can get up to the second space and score 5 points at the end of the game, which I think is a really interesting. There's an interesting moment there.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was a really cool game. I really like the whole track system with the marshal.
I love that part.
And the wanted players. It really feels like one continuous track, really. Even though, as you described it, you've got this up here and this down here. It's almost like a spectrum. Because if you drop off the wanted track, you can actually decide.
Yeah, you can become.
Yeah, if you're neutral, you can effectively decide.
And
what
you can win the game. You can win the game.
Not having done any of it.
Yeah, Derek Funkhauser played last night, and his wife won never getting on a track.
I mean, that's the cool thing about any kind of sandbox game. When you give people directions that they can choose, but still allow them to play the game and not choose either one of those paths, that's awesome because it gives people direction and allows people to make whatever decision they want to make during the game.
Well, and also having sort of a morality element to the sandbox aspect is really helps underscore that for sure. I also dug how the fact that there's not really a runaway thing. There's can be big gaps in scoring, but then all of a sudden, the marshal can jump up because that track down there has some major points towards the end.
It's the slow and steady strategy for sure. Jeremy was way out in front. I remember there was one particular guy in our session that was like, "There's no way," and then that guy ended up winning. And he won by he had one of the highest scores I'd ever seen. And the thing about being the wanted player is it's the early kind of rush strategy. And then you have to start to kind of tailor where's my game end. Okay,
you have to stay away from people at that point.
And it's a lot. You end up spending a lot of actions having to move around because you want to avoid trouble. That's the smart thing to do.
Very cool game. Congratulations being your first title. This is a big one.
I know. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, and also we didn't say this, but these are prototype components.
Yeah, I think
these look fantastic, but man, these
we'll
this game's gonna look really
throw
nice.
Some shots too of the finished artwork.
Yeah, the miniatures are from Pure Arts. These are actually hand sculpted. The same guys who did Kemet, Inish, like the big minis for Takinoko.
Yeah, these I don't play a lot of miniatures games, but the fact that these have these sort of flowing coats flapping in the wind is sweet.
Super cool. If you guys have any questions about it, make them in the comments below. Subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter. Travis, you make some comments as well.
Yes, please join us in the comments section.
I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has.
And thank you for stopping by.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.